Hello, Toffees. Welcome back to the Blue Frontier. James here, joined by Ryan and Shan after Everton 0, Bournemouth 2. Goodison Park's storied history of FA Cup ties comes to a close, unfortunately, as Everton drop out of the competition in the fourth round after conceding twice in the opening 45. We're going to get into the match as we always do. Before we do that, just a reminder, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. Follow us on socials. All the links in the description. We appreciate that very much. Going right into the summary quote, my turn to choose today. I went with Sledvigs from our Discord, who said, poor first half scattered with self-inflicted wounds, especially from Tark. Second half, much more promising. Very unlucky not to score. Can take some positives. Alcaraz with a nice cameo. Njai continues to impress. I think that's succinct and about as good as you're going to get. I mean, it was an ugly first half, but I think as we get into the narrative of the match, some good things to take away as we moved through into the second period of play. With that, I'll hand it off to Shan for score predictions from our Discord.
Thanks, James. And this will be short and sweet. Some interesting responses in regards to score predictions, kind of all over the place. So got to give the Discord credit. Even though we're on a 3-game win streak, they really, I would say, were pretty unbiased in regards to the opposition. So having said that, though, only one correct winner today. And that is Mark M. Toyota driver. He also now joins the illustrious 2 times winners club. So good job, Mark. A great prediction. And then, just kind of a reminder to continue to put the score predictions in. It's really fun. And it's just now that we have a nice race for first place, it's very easy to also get in with just 2 kind of being the winner so far. So let's move it on. James, to you for the Everton lineup.
Yeah, kind of short and sweet on the lineup today. Just the one change for Everton. Mikolenko drops out of the squad, allegedly felt his calf. Felt his calf was the announcement from the club as the lineup dropped, so he was removed from the squad. In his place comes Ashley Young. Otherwise, an unchanged side for David Moyes. Another injury news for Everton. Nathan Patterson allegedly hurt his hamstring, so hopefully it seems like alluding to the fact that it's kind of minor, so hopefully he's back soon. But yet again, you're looking at very slim options on the bench for Everton after the first 11. And Bournemouth also forced into a little bit of rotation on the day, but still a very strong squad, of course, having a very good season.
Yeah, to your point, James, just a ton of injuries Bournemouth have had, and credit to them for just having the season that they've had. But even then, they find a way to have pretty good rotation, all things considered. Justin Kluivert and Ryan's favorite player, Dango Atwara, is on the bench. Atwara, whatever you want to pronounce is up to you. Giving Marcus Tavernier and Benjamin George Winterburn. I don't know if this guy just came from Game of Thrones. The commentary on the Discord was really fun. This guy, I felt like it was just almost kind of, like a ESPN Make-A-Wish deal of just giving somebody a chance to play today. And Benjamin George Winterbird was the guy. So backline stays relatively the same. Those 2 studs in the middle, Zabani and Dean Hudson, just really, really having a great season. It's just funny seeing the rumors, too, that Juventus wants to buy him back. Just a really criminal sale on their end. Lewis Cook playing right back, just the kind of versatile guy he is. Ryan Christie and Tyler Adams, really the engine of that team today, and you kind of saw it as we'll get into it. But good to see Tyler Adams healthy now again. It's been really good from the American perspective as well as theirs. But I think the guy for me that was really the key cog to them, not only this season, but today was Antoine Semenyo, and I was hoping that he would get a little bit of rest. That was not the case, and yeah, he has just been so good for them. Kind of a quick thing on him. I mean, they bought him from Bristol City for less than $5 million. So just a guy that is going to be absolutely, when they sell him, which will be one day, they'll make a ton of money, but really, really great player for him and just super talent.
He's got a lot. He's a really good fit for the Premier League. He was deadly today. I want to remind people, though, too, that Bournemouth last year sold Dominic Solanke for €65 million. And that's fine, but people forget this team has spent last year gross buys was 127 million euros, the year before 128 million euros, and 83 million euros before that. So this team has spent money, and what's been nice is they've spent money on a similar footballing identity. So it's not just that they have better players than Everton, and some of these guys I don't think are amazing, but they've got a ton of injuries as well. But They put out a strong lineup today, but the players are built to play a certain style of play, and they have a strong identity. They know what they're doing, and it was very obvious. And that made it very hard for us. And I think when you sat back and looked at it, I think there were some key matchups in the game today, and you thought maybe you could exploit some of them, but not many. Like, if you really kind of look at it and broke it down, like in a couple of the matches we've had on this run where we've played some bad competition, there's still a couple matchups that you thought, yeah, maybe we could get at him. NJ might have been the only guy you looked at that maybe could do some damage on there, but without proper support in Young, it's a lot easier to deal with someone that's in isolation. But otherwise, I mean, did you really? I saw some key matchups, but none of these matchups would I have said we were in good shape on, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, I think the first one is Beto versus both the back line, and it's just, if you've watched Bournemouth at all this year, that is not a good matchup, like on paper, in regards to, you know, comparing Wout Fest and Yannick Vestergaard to Dean Hudson and Zabanne. I mean, those guys are super quick, but they're also very athletic. I think on set pieces, right, that's a different question, right, where you probably could see them.
Box defenders, they're not the greatest. But they're perfect for the style of play, though, right, Sean? I mean, this is what happens when you buy a guy for the identity.
Yeah, and it's just the long ball strategy, or putting kind of, you know, let's just say the balls last week of James Garner, right, and Tarkowski. That's not going to happen today, right? We knew that kind of coming in. It's just, could, you know, if Beto gets the ball, could he kind of compete against those guys? That was really, I think, you know, the main matchup for me, just because I didn't think that they would be able to get in behind, especially with how athletic that back line is.
There's also a combination factor here, because I think the next matchup was one fear we had going into the window when we were removing Dyche was, I think we'd love to have a kind of progressive, interesting manager, but there's some limitations with the back line. This back line is not well constructed to deal with pressure, is it?
No, not at all. We know that we don't necessarily have the best guys on the ball. Looking at 39-year-old Ashley Young, who has had a halfway decent season, but like, he's just not mobile enough. The midfield was another like concern. How do you feed balls into that midfield and break their pressure? Who's dropping deep to receive the ball? We haven't seen this group of players asked to play on the ball very much, and clearly that's something that Moyes was emphasizing early on. But as you said, Ryan, you're looking at a team that's recruited consistently to a vision for 3 consecutive years. Everton played a certain way under Sean Dyche, and it's not going to change overnight, that transformation. You don't have the personnel to do it.
Yeah, and there's a combination of factors, too. So if you're being pressured and you got like Tark cannot release a ball quickly enough. I know I've said it before. If he has all day, he can ping a ball okay. You know, he's not the terrible passer, but you've got to release the ball very quickly, receive the ball very cleanly. O'Brien's decent on the ball, but he's playing right back. I mean, that's not an easy role for him. Young, if he's left alone, can pass from deep, but he's not going to move the ball real quickly, and he's not athletic at all. And Ghana is okay in this type of setup. We've seen him do it before, but he's more of a progressive type player. He's stuck playing a 6, and Garner's not a 6. I mean, he just does not drop deep into space well, so he can face. His ball control is probably his weakness. His first touch is inconsistent. Again, these are all guys, if you give them time and space, they can do a little bit of damage, but in the situation today, so it magnifies everything. Beto's not going to get great service, and in order to hold the ball up, I mean, you got to get a ball somewhere around you. And that, I saw some critique on Beto's ability to hold the ball up. I mean, you're being a little unfair here, because even if he flicks it off of a header one time, you know, because maybe there's a physical matchup. Definitely with Housen, he could push him around a little bit, although it seemed like, you know, it was a different matchup. If there's no one around him, what the heck do you want him to do? You know, I don't think Decore did a very good job supporting him. And often, we were having to play the ball out from our own right side. So Njai's nowhere near him. So that's not really an option. Just a bad matchup, I think. And then it's compounded, too, by the fact your fullbacks have to sit back. I mean, I didn't like any of the matchups today in that regard. Semenyo was really difficult on that side. Kirkes got pushed up higher. Lindstrom, O'Brien, and particularly Tarkowski against Semenyo, I mean, that's really where it was created.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, move into the timeline here, because there's, I think, first half, we'll obviously talk about the events, but I think the first noteworthy highlight was the Njai chance that he manufactured out of basically nothing.
But you still saw the pressure, you know what I mean? So yeah. I would say this kind of came a little bit on the run of play, and that was it. I mean, there's nothing really to happen because we were under pressure. We were not doing that great against it. This was almost a gift. I mean, a little bit Brighton-esque, and I'm thinking, wow, I think Kepa does pretty well here.
He does, yeah, and up to that point, Everton, I mean, it was 3-0 in shots in favor of Bournemouth. Everton having a lot of the ball early as well in that first 18 minutes. minutes, 61% possession. So we had the ball, but we weren't really able to transition all that effectively. But then Njai, as you said, kind of a gift, pressuring on the touchline, wins the ball back in a situation you almost never see guys win the ball back there. And then does it all himself, gets in front of Kepa. Good shot, I guess, but Kepa makes himself big and kind of traps the ball under his knee, manages to stop it, but almost a very fortuitous lead for Everton early on. Unfortunately, that was, but positivity was not long-lived, because just 3 minutes later, it's Bournemouth at the other end. It's Semenyo. It's Tarkowski sliding in for the challenge. I originally thought he won the ball pretty cleanly and was just despondent at the lack of VAR, but then at the first replay, I mean, that's a penalty. Goes through him, doesn't win the ball, gives them a free opportunity, and Semenyo takes it. Bit of a, I don't know if you call it cleverness on the penalty take, kind of quick turn and just sprints at it and hits it very hard. Pickford guesses correctly, but too much force on it and goes in the back of the net. We're down 1-0.
Yeah, I thought that was incredibly clever by Semenyo, because I have rarely ever seen a run-up like that. I think, and of course for Pickford, I think he was a little bit surprised, which I think any keeper would in that case, because it's very uncommon. Yeah, just unfortunate, right? I think to your point, James, it's just, we have that Njai chance. There's no offsides, which we know, right? So it's just, you kind of have to live with that. And unfortunately, it was kind of the start of a really nasty end for Tarkowski today, just given that mistake and then kind of what's to come.
Yeah, I don't really know what to attribute that to other than their pressure. Just over time, I mean, it's fatiguing. Every time you seem like you have the ball, there's someone coming at you. You've got to release the ball quickly, and it just compounds. So, I think that's what a lot of what this was about today, and kudos to them. They're very well organized, and they have the guys that know how to play in the system, and it was effective today. For the most part, at least in the first half. They came really close in the 42nd. I think, again, we were just kind of a mess in the back. And you could tell our guys are dropping deeper and deeper, trying to make things happen. Njai, I thought, was very good today, but when he's having to drop this far deep and cut into the half space and try and carry the ball, he's not going to be able to carry the ball 80, 90 yards at a time. And that's what this does, right?
Yeah, it's Njai dropping super deep. He's trying to cut inside, as you said, and he tries to, under pressure, make a pass to Ghana that's really nowhere near it. It's intercepted almost immediately. Then Bournemouth get the shot and win a corner. A couple minutes later, this is the second goal that sends us into halftime 2-0 down. It's Jebbison. Just disorganization at the back, really. Pick playing it short to Tarkowski. Again, a terrible pass from Tark. I don't know why you're trying to lift it in the air and trying to make like a 20-yard pass, but just no one around it where it's going. Bournemouth jump all over it with that pressure. We gets kind of just mixed up in the box. We can't clear our lines. Jebbison has a couple chances to knock it in. It just sort of bundles it home past Pickford. Disorganization is the theme here, and just inability to clear our lines. It's not a good way to concede. And giving the ball up in your final third, making things pretty easy for Bournemouth there.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I think the commentary on the Discord is you get to the half 1-0, you feel okay, right? And it's just, that was a real gut punch, just because it was, as you pointed out, James, just incredibly self-inflicted. And unfortunately, the Njai chance, 25 minutes earlier, you feel okay. And going into that half, you feel like Moyes is really going to have to make some either changes or some sort of motivational plea to just get these guys to kind of really just kind of figure out how they can essentially just get some sort of threat on net, because Bournemouth really just dominated the match after that.
Yeah, and there was basically no coherent response from Everton after the penalty. I mean, if anything, we just regressed and they were all over us, taking us into halftime. I mean, some interesting numbers here. Obviously, the penalty gives them a pretty hefty XG number, but 10 shots, 3 on target to our 2 shots, with the Njai opportunity being the only one on target. 0.19 expected goals for Everton in the first half. Look, it's always going to feel bad, especially after being up 3-0 at halftime in our previous couple games. That's a totally different scenario, but Bournemouth very good, getting in dangerous areas consistently. 15 touches in the box for them, only 7 for Everton. But we really weren't able to get our attacking players involved at all. Beto, 11 touches in the first half. Decore had 13, but between them both, just 1 touch in the box. So you're really just not getting anything from your attacking players and not able to get them in.
And compare that to Bournemouth, where Semenyo had 7, Jebbison had 5 touches in the box. Those two guys had 12 touches in the box. Dukes and Beto had won for us. And I mean, to me, that's the game. I mean, that's really what it said. You know, they pinned us deep so much, so often that although maybe their play wasn't dramatically fantastic or organized or lovely or wonderful, over time, eventually things are going to happen. And yes, it was mistakes on our end. And yes, it's possible we could have held tight, maybe played a little smarter, dealt with the pressure and gotten to halftime and maybe not given up anything. But that's not typically what happens, you know, and there are different ways to generate offense, and they did it a lot through their pressure. And yeah, just look at the numbers from the penalty to halftime. I mean, we were really struggling going into the half for sure.
Yeah, I mean, 6-0 to shot in shots favor to Bournemouth, 50-50 possession. They had 6 dribbles to our 1, 5-6 in tackles, slightly winning that, but just illustrative of how much better they were and how little we were able to manufacture.
And I think we came out in the second half and looked better. I wouldn't say overly dangerous, but certainly more aggressive, and maybe part of that's game state. You know, maybe it's Bournemouth sitting back a little bit. Again, they have a lot of injuries, so I'm sure they thought this was great, fortuitous for us. You know, we could take the foot off the gas a little and not run our people into the ground. And so I would argue that the first 20 minutes of the second half were fine, but I think what really changed the match was the subs. And I think suddenly we just came to life and created a lot of good chances. And I think it's left people with a little bit of a good taste kind of after this match. I think we're all excited to see the new guy too.
Yeah, well, I think just to add before the subs, Ryan, it's just I felt like there were times that we'd get into good spots, right? Even set pieces, Garner just couldn't put balls in the box today, and it was one of those situations where I think on a different day we take advantage of those chances and put more of a threat in the box. And then to your point, I think what really changed the game and really gives us a lot of excitement for the future is the 2 subs. And credit to Moyes making the subs that he did, Charly Alcaraz for Doucouré, and then Jack for Jesper. And yeah, it's just, I think to your point, just within minutes, just provided, I think, some excitement for not only the present, but the future.
And I do want to say this, it's not like Bournemouth were devoid of chances. I mean, they had their shots on target, maybe aside from one fantastic Pickford save, they weren't consistently dangerous, but it was still there. So, I mean, a lot of this was intentional, and frankly, maybe even on a better finishing day for them in the second half, maybe this match doesn't turn all that interesting. But yeah, I mean, these guys made a big difference. I haven't seen Jack Harrison play with that kind of confidence and that sort of skill in a long, long time. But yeah, I mean, right after they got subbed in, I mean, Tark makes a fantastic parry on a save. But after that, man, it was all Everton. And you just saw I saw a very different kind of Charly Alcaraz player that I watched at Flamenco and even Juve. I mean, he was playing a little bit deeper, had the ability to carry the ball. He's got a great right foot. We know that. And I think we saw all of those things.
Yeah, as you say, almost immediately, Charlie gets on the ball. He passes it to Beto, goes to Harrison. Harrison liked a lot of what I saw from him today, able to create space one-on-one with defenders and get crosses in, which he does here. It's an in-swinger into danger, but there's no one on the end of it. I mean, that's like right in the 6-yard box, kind of exactly where you'd hope to see someone making a run. And then in the 71st, this was maybe the moment Everton should have seized if they wanted to get back into the game, but indicative of the fact that it was not to be. It's Charlie winning a free kick, does really well to win the free kick, and just kind of pulls up to the ref had played advantage, and he kind of pulls up to get the free kick. Bit of contention around who should take it, but he's confident in his abilities. He steps up, rings the post, freezes the keeper. It's a great take. Rings off the post back into play. It's a great hit.
I said on the Discord, I'm like, do not let Garner take it.
Yeah.
Let Alcaraz take it, because I know his right foot's really good, but it's just, it wasn't Garner's day,
Yeah, not at all, and especially from the evidence we had from set pieces up to that point. But it's a great hit from Charlie, great first impression. If that had gone in, I mean, what a debut for him it would have been. But we'll take the consolation anyway. 74th minute, James Garner comes off, as you said, Ryan, kind of not his day. Brings on T.I., Timmy Bunham. We'll talk about Tim over the course of the remaining minutes in the timeline, but right after that, Everton wins a corner. Njai, near post, flicks it to the far post. It's cleared. It goes back to Jack. Again, Jack able to get crosses in, goes to the far post. Jake O'Brien there. This one's off the post, I believe. Kepa stops it. Madness. The crowd's finally into it, looking like we're threatening. It looks like we finally might get a goal to get back into it. Another minute later, Jack crosses it in again, untouched, off the far post. How much more does Everton have to do?
The deflection's pretty fortunate, too, that it goes right back to Kepa. This is one of those ones where it's those kind of slow crosses that are bending, and as a keeper, you can't you can't go get the ball, because someone gets their head on it, it's in. It's so hard. He's just staring at it, hits the post perfectly. If it just comes off at just a slightly different angle, maybe Beto's there to tap it in. But I think at RB Mercy, I think they get this spot on. When you hit the post 3 times in about 7 minutes, it's just not going to happen today. And it felt a little bit like that.
Well, I think what's funny is if you think about Kepa, right? He's thinking the first 60 minutes they can't get a ball in the box, they can't threaten at all, and then all of a sudden it's an onslaught. It kind of reminds you of Pickford against Spurs, where it's just it's quiet for so much of the game, and then all of a sudden they start to come alive. And so as a keeper, you're kind of wondering what to do in those cases. And credit to Jack, he just needed a South American friend apparently to start playing to quality, right? And then of course Bournemouth, in typical Uriel fashion, make a sub. Ryan's favorite player, Dango Atuara, comes on, and then David Brooks as well, enemy at Bournemouth. But then, just, of course, Milos Kerkez, which we'll get into today. What a great haircut he has. Takes out Jack at the edge of the box, a deserved yellow card. And you're kind of wondering what they can do with that set piece, right? And unfortunately, Jack, he does a great job of cutting back one from the wing to Charlie. He sets up Tim, and then, of course, the shot is over the bar, which kind of, unfortunately, is the common theme of today.
I mean, look, in Tim's defense, this is the situation that you want him in for. You've got to push for goals. He has the freedom now to pressure. We know he's a good athlete. And look, he was making things happen, but you're just not going to get the quality from him in the final third. It's just not his game. He's not an attacking midfielder. I know some people are saying they wanted to see him play for Decore, and that's fine. He'll get on the ball some more. He's a very good athlete. But if you were expecting him to smash this one home with his left, it's not going to happen, guys. It just wasn't. I hope he proves this wrong and scores a couple, but if you look at his past, he's not that type of player. But it's a good opportunity for him, in an FA Cup match, and it's good to see him come back. He's clearly a good athlete. But it's where we are a little bit as a team. You know what I mean? I think this is the moment, though, where I thought they were going to shut the door on us. This is the one where Pickford just comes up just massive. This is about as big of a chance as you're going to get. Phenomenal save, but it was very much against the run of play, though. That's the thing. We were really dominating the game at this point.
Yeah, all the pressure on Bournemouth up to this point, but it's just a really good through ball from Christie to David Brooks, who times his run really well to get in behind. And it's just a pretty simple cutback to Semenyo. Pick makes a huge save there to preserve any hope for Everton, of course. And then in response to that, David Moyes makes the sub that we all knew was coming. We all saw this coming. I think all of us on this show maybe thought we left this tactical decision in the Sean Dyche era, but it's Michael Keane on for Idrissa Gana Gueye to play up front. Kind of jaw-dropping, but then you look at that bench and it's like, well, do you put Martin Sheriff on to chase the game? So we lump Keane up top to try to maybe lump it in the box and hope for a deflection, hope for a second ball to get the goal. But that was not to be. A couple minutes later, Tim does a pretty good job here to create a shot for himself at the top of the box, and again, isn't able to really get it on target, but does well to create the shot in the first place with the defense set in front of him. So that was maybe his best contribution, in my opinion.
I enjoyed the inconsistency of the referee today. That was really fun at times, where a shove would be a foul, then it wouldn't be a foul. And this play, I just think, totally typified it in about the 87th minute, where Bournemouth get the throw, despite the fact the only reason why it went off of, I think, Jack, is because he got flat out shoved in the back. Just blatantly right in front of the line. It's like, how do you not see that? Do you think that's typical that a player would chest it out of bounds on his own volition? That was totally bizarre. And then even worse, eventually we win the throw. It comes around. Jack turns the corner on Kerkez, who just flops to the ground without really anything. It was really strange, and lays it off. It's looking like it's going to be a really big chance to Njai. And you're thinking, well, maybe this is it. And he blows a whistle immediately, calls a foul on Jack. It was an absolutely ludicrous call. It was completely awful in every way. I just don't know what you're possibly thinking. He had a good angle to look at it. Njai gets a yellow from flipping out at him, which I think was rightfully deserved because it was that bad.
Yeah, if you've ever seen Kerkez with his shirt off, the guy is jacked. he's not getting thrown around by Jack Harrison. So like the fact that this ref calls that, and then, Njai, I mean, he's kind of going to lead the league in unjust yellow cards at a certain point, right? Because it's just like he had every right to complain about this one. Just, I think, the cherry on top for the level of frustration that we had today.
That was really the last.
Wait, hold up. What did you just say? The cherry on top?
Yeah,
really?
no, not on this post match against the Cherries. We can't be talking about cherries on top.
What is wrong with you guys? Anyway, that was pretty much it. The chances too. After that, it was like just kind of inevitable. You knew what was going to happen there. I'm sorry. The referee was like flipping a coin half the time today.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just absolutely atrocious. And with no VAR, thankfully, nothing really catastrophic happened. But you never know. I mean, look, there were very different halves. I think a lot of people can feel pretty good that we came out in the second half. Yes, I get it. 5-0 on shots on target. That was kind of strange, but that doesn't really show the difference. I mean, Everton were very much more front foot, very aggressive, too. That's what I really liked. I mean, you hit 3 posts. But what I loved is the battling, like 9 of 11 in tackles for the second half, 35-19 in duels won in the second half, 67% in ground duel win percentage. That's a ridiculous number. And I think this stat is really the big one in terms of where the possession was occurring. Because again, Everton had more possession, but in the first half, 116 of Everton's 227 passes were in their own half. In the second half, only 59 of the 216 passes were. Again, a lot of this may be game state, but at least gives you an idea that we were in there, we had the ball, we had chances for sure. And fundamentally, who knows? One of those goals go in, you never know what could happen. And David Moyes hit the nail on the head. I mean, fundamentally after the match, at Tony Scott 11, thanks for the tweet on this one, we conceded 2 terrible goals. Bournemouth pressed us well, and they did. And once they went up 2-0, they really didn't feel the need to pressure us after that. And who knows? Maybe we go up 1, maybe we get 1 back, and then they come get on the front foot. But kind of a shame to see the old lady go out in the FA Cup that way. But I still think there was just a mix of performances today, some very, very bad ones as you really kind of take a step back and look at the summary. And I think the pressure is really what caused some of those bad performances, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, we unfortunately just have to point out Tarkowski, as almost everyone did who gave us an instant match reaction, just a bad day at the office for him. 82 touches for Tark, which was 13 more than anyone else in the team, 55 for 71 in passes, 5 for 14 in long balls, but 7 giveaways on passes that weren't long balls. And a couple of those were very costly, and a few others were almost very nearly costly. So just a bad day for Tark. I know we've been singing his praises. Everton's defenses look good the last few days, but you ask him to get on the ball too much, you're kind of asking for trouble. Furthermore, again, the pressure, you'd hope to maybe look for some long balls to break that pressure, but we just were not able to complete very much. O'Brien, 0 for 5 in long balls. Ghana 1 for 5. Tark, as we said, 5 for 14. James Garner 0 for 2. There were a couple who were decent. Branthwaite was 3 of 7. He had a couple switches of play, one in particular that I remember that was really nice. Young 5 for 7, but that right side left a lot to be desired.
I think one thing also to add to that, James, is I think Bournemouth did an incredible job of really making it difficult from an angular perspective. In Jake O'Brien, for example, right, having the ball on the right so many times and have to almost put a perfectly curled ball in, right? They really, I would say, did a good job putting personnel in spots where we had to essentially be at utter perfection for some of these passes to go through. So I give, of course, a little bit of blame to our team today, but at the same time, it's just, you're playing a well-oiled machine, and they did a great job today of really making it really hard on us to kind of put quality in the box.
Well, you said it to begin. The matchup was bad for us in many ways because, okay, fine, now maybe that opens up a channel if your fullbacks are pushing higher. But when you've got two guys back at center back that can really move, their anticipation is good, they have a good read on the game, but more importantly, that pace is really there, it makes it easier to track down and get to those balls initially, and they know what they're doing. They can be one track, we're going to be aggressive, we're going to keep it in, and it makes all the difference in the world. Also, I think not the best matchup for James Garner. I think he was the other one that was so good last match, but today it really was exposed. And that's fine. fundamentally why he's a decent fit for what Dyche wants to do. I think he'll be productive at times under Moyes, but it's when we look to go forward. I mean, not having a guy like Onana was, who could really get on the ball, deal with pressure, and kind of provide some just solidifying moments and calm us down. It just wasn't there. I mean, he's dribbled past 5 times, which is a really massive number. But that's part of his problems, right? He gets a little aggressive. Sometimes his angles aren't the best. I mean, Tark was only 2, but 5 is a lot. Garner was 0 for 6 in crosses. I mean, the set-piece delivery was just not good enough, and ultimately just struggled dealing with the pressure. But hey, look, man, he deserves a lot of credit coming right back into the match, into the team last weekend and playing so well. So you got to cut him a little bit of a break.
Look, the quality of player we have, there's going to be ups and downs. I will say 0.53 XG from set plays all in the second half for Everton, as we were kind of threatening, but the set-piece delivery, obviously, not up to standards. The standards today. Moyes had a quote in the post-match. Everton Extra, thank you for the quote tweet. We said, "My message to the players was they've done a lot of good things today. There's a lot of things which were un-Everton-like in what we did in the first half, but we're trying to improve, make things better. On the journey, we're going to make some mistakes as well." I mean, pragmatic comments. We had a good run, really good start to life under Moyes, ran up against a decent team who were set up to kind of nullify the things that we exploited in our opposition in recent matches. That said, probably still can pick out some good performances today, especially in the second half. I'll go first. I went with Njai. I mean, he's just a lock for this segment almost every single week, but again, today, just very, very good, a difference maker for us, and really the one player who you always feel can make something happen for Everton. 16 for 18 in passes, which is 89%, which led all starters. 6 for 8 in dribbles. 6 dribbles is more than any other player in either team. 2 for 3 in tackles, had 5 recoveries. 11 for 14 in ground duels, and drew 2 fouls. All in all, again, he's just the one guy who is so dangerous every time he gets it. And really in the first half, especially after the penalty, he was pretty anonymous, but then got the opportunity in the second half to try to make some things happen. Happy with his performance today, just remarkably consistent.
Yeah, I'm really happy to say mine. I'm going to go with Jack Harrison. I think he really, especially for a player that we've really worried about, but also have, I think, full disclosure, have been pretty level-headed on, as many folks have been very upset about Jack. It's good to really see him, perform the way he did. I think today his first touch was everything that, you expect from Jack, but the second and third were great. I think in terms of the way he was taking on defenders, right, both with both feet. We talk about before how Garner just couldn't get quality in the box. Jack did more than that. So from his standpoint, I'm really excited to see, I think, hopefully him build on this performance. I think today was a perfect environment of kind of being in a no pressure situation where we're already down 2-0, play with freedom, right? And I think he did a great job of that. But I also could see, we talked about Njai and Beto last week about trying to kind of build that connection. I kind of see that with Charly Alcaraz already, and I know it's a short sample size, but I think hopefully too, if we can get that Jack Harrison for the rest of the season, even, remotely close to that, I think it's going to, provide that healthy competition for Jesper, and it's just going to get, I think, the best out of both of them. So, really happy for Jack. Not many positives to take away from today, but he's definitely one of them.
And I really like what Alcaraz did today. As we said previously on the pod, feel free to check it out. We get into him a little bit of depth, but he seemed a little fish out of water in his previous clubs. He was very good in the Premier League with Southampton, and a lot of that was because he was playing a little bit deeper, or had the freedom to carry the ball and face the goal a lot more, rather than playing tiki-taka, trying to keep the ball with his back to goal and coming in between the lines like he was doing with Flamengo. It's just not his deal. And so you saw it today. I mean, in 25 minutes, 2 shots, 14 of 15 in passes. Spot on. Created 2 chances. In 23 touches, he hit the woodwork, 3 touches in the box, 3 passes into the final third, 2 for 2 on long balls. About all he did was slip once, 4 recoveries. You saw the aggression a little bit. I thought he really looked dangerous, and he's definitely going to be an option going forward. Would I start him in the derby? No, probably not. But in the cases where you really need a little bit more attacking aptitude, I think maybe he's a viable option there in more of that 10 role. And I think it also gives you the opportunity to have a little more depth in midfield. I mean, you really don't want Ghana playing 90 minutes every match. You now have the ability to sub in Dukes at either one of those positions. If we're milking a lead, there's nothing wrong with Decore playing in that position, kind of chasing people around. If you really need to get on it, nothing wrong with him playing deeper and pushing up a little bit higher and having Alcaraz be in there. So promising start for him. You saw his dangerous right foot. You saw the ball carrying. You saw kind of all the things that you can expect from him. And I mean, it's exciting. Clearly a good deal in my opinion.
Ryan, James, do you see a kind of situation where maybe Alcaraz becomes the 10 and then Decore drops back, putting Garner on the bench? Do you think that that's a possibility at any time?
I think it depends on the opponent, personally.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. It's going to take a bit for that, I would think. And I don't necessarily know if it puts Garner on the bench necessarily, too. I mean, it could be still Garner with Decore, because Decore gives you the flexibility to come off the bench. The thing is, Decore can run forever, though, too. So I know some people don't like, the skill that Decore's been showing recently. He's been inconsistent on the ball. I get that. In the Discord, I posted a highlight reel of his from Watford, and it's amazing to see the difference in fluidity now. I mean, Dukes is kind of, he's kind of on the downside of his career a little bit.
Yeah.
I think he's been an underrated player for us at this point. I feel like people are discrediting some of the good work he did. I think it just depends on the situation. I think maybe it was asking a little bit much for Jimmy Garner to step in against the side and perform the magic he did last week.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I hope that that's something we see in the coming weeks. I think as Alcaraz gets more comfortable, up to speed on what Moyes wants to do, I think he's a more natural fit for that role than Decore, undoubtedly. And Decore just, didn't really have his best day today. Not just going forward, where he created one chance, one key pass, only 27 touches for him, 3 in the box, but he also had dribbled past once and had no defensive actions. So not really like tracking back or doing too much off the ball either. I liked what we saw from Alcaraz. As Ryan said, I think it's going to depend on opponent a little bit, but I'd be surprised if Moyes isn't already thinking about ways to get him more involved in the team right off the bat.
I mean, he couldn't have made much of a better first impression today.
Yeah, I mean, really lifted the spirits, I think, after what would have been a kind of deflating loss, although I think
if that shot goes in, by the way, I mean, it could be a totally different game.
100%. That would have been, and then the chances we created afterwards, who knows? Again, they're not that great in the air under a lot of pressure. We could have exploited that with our strength and just size that we have advantage over them. So could have worked out differently. It, of course, did not. And as a result, I mean, I just wanted to call this out. I know people are kind of fuming. There's people who maybe don't follow the Premier League super closely and just see an upstart Bournemouth beating us 3 times in one season. The first time they've beaten a team 3 times in a season since they did so against Carlisle United in 2012-2013. Kind of wild. The first time that they made it to the 5th round of the FA Cup in consecutive years in their history. So shows you what good recruitment can do. Recruitment is not cognizant of a club's history or size. It's just good business will get you good results. And I think Bournemouth just embody that to a T.
It's coherence, too. It's recruitment strategy aligned with the football identity, and that's what we need to see. And I mean, I think we're going to have a big summer, so we need a summer that's even bigger than the stuff that they've put together. I mean, imagine a couple more players like Njai. Okay, that's probably a little bit of an unfair expectation. But this team is just starved for quality, especially in the final third. But my heavens, look at who we're having to play at fullback. Like, people need to get a little bit of a grip. This is not the best side. And, we're probably 2 wins away in the league of being completely safe. So to me, that's a testament. We have spent no money, man. Like negative net spend of $100 million over the last 3 years. When you have a team like Bournemouth spending $350 million, like wake up, people. That's it. Like think about that. I mean, net they're like 250. So think about that. So net spend they're like 250 million or so. We're negative 100 million over 3 years. So they have net spend wise been 350 million pounds ahead of us. And look, as good as they are, they've had some misses too. I mean, Hamed Traore is on loan for the second time since they dropped 26 mil on him, and I thought that was a questionable deal as well. I mean, a lot of guys. Romain Favre, how's my man doing? I thought that was an interesting deal. 15 million, right? About what we played for Njai, or at least comparable from the same league. I mean, you're never going to be perfect. But if you have that strong identity, you're buying people that you think you can plug and play for the right things, eventually your team's going to be pretty good. So I think we've got a much bigger potential as a club, obviously, than Bournemouth. So things to look forward to, and I thought you saw some glimpses of it today.
Yeah, and then I think going into our favorite comments, today, I think, James, great pull on this one, the Discord in a nutshell. Cabe Wee, of course, great moderator and loyalty of the Discord. Lost in field deflating after responding well in the second half, which is a much different feeling. The immediate follow-up comment from this, Sleazy Toffee, Lindstrom Stan, Toffee's unable to overcome psychological impact of Kirk's haircut. I mean, it is funny because I know we mentioned it a lot, but the close-ups that you got of that, I don't know. You talk about angular difficulty. I mean, his barber had angular difficulty on that one. I mean, awful.
Yeah, no good. And that was maybe the most frequent comment we got on them in the match day thread of the Discord today was just roasting his haircut, which it was pretty bad. And that is, you do feel like that probably had some psychological impact. Like, I can't believe he's out here on the pitch looking like that. But I think Kev's point is a really good one, too. I mean, how many times under the Dyche era did we go behind and there was just very little response from the team? And we saw a totally different response today. And you attribute that to Moyes. You attribute that to the momentum coming off, getting a few wins under your belt, the confidence building in the players, and the subs that he made that got the best out of the personnel he used. I mean, you think he deserves some credit for that. And just even despite the loss, a better feeling all around at the club. As a former manager once said, it's helps a lot when there's a few wins mixed into your run. So I think that really helps lift the spirits across the.
But I think you kind of hit it too, James, right? Not all 2-0 losses are created equal. And
sure.
I would also say too, from a momentum perspective, I still think a match like this gives you that, right? Because they really had a great response the second half. I thought the subs, Charlie, Jack, even Tim, right? Like it's good to see in a time where we don't really have the luxury of health, and thank God, knock on wood, that there were no injuries from today. That unfortunately we're going to have to rely on these guys, right, for the rest of the season. But then that being said, even with just kind of the lackluster start to today, they really showed a lot of fight and the S word in the second half.
Wise decision on that last one. Yeah, and I think the haiku pretty much kind of takes it home with TJ Bureau / Thomas. Match reaction haiku. Tark was terrible. Alcaraz was promising. On to the derby.
Yeah, and we look forward. I mean, last Goodison derby.
Hold on. Just let it fester.
Sorry, should we snap for that?
No. Just relax. Just let it feel it, embrace it. Okay. Anyway, beyond that, yeah, I mean, on to the derby. But I think the promising aspect of it is important. I think it's one of those things where, look, I'm not expecting much from this derby. Style of play-wise, it's not a great matchup, but you never know what you're going to get in these matches. Even a point would be massively uplifting. The fans will be up for it, knowing that we're going into it. But this would have a little different feel for it if it wasn't for that second half. And so I think it matters. And look, I just, even after a performance like this in the second half, it just makes you feel promising about the rest of the season. I think we're in pretty good shape. I don't think we're going to get sucked into the relegation battle at this point. I think we've created enough space. We just need a couple more wins and we'll be done and dusted with it. But it makes you think, you kind of want to start thinking forward. And Mark Douglas at MSI Douglas, who's a pretty good source out there for football, made this tweet. And I think it's relevant. It's hard to not think this way and think about some of our players. The tweet was, Everton set to have biggest budget for years this summer after hard choices in January. Talking about walking away from deals in January, to maximize the PSR headroom. And in theory, with the increase in revenue from the new stadium and the fantastic fan zone created off the train stop, really something of beauty. I mean, they really, really dug deep to build that thing and put up those barriers. I mean, talk about a fan zone. Obviously, I'm being incredibly sarcastic at this point. But it makes you think, and we've got a couple guys on option to buy, and you saw Charlie with a very good promising debut today, and obviously his option is fairly low at £15 million for a guy that's young, 22 and talented. But I heard a lot of people kind of decry and talk about how poor Lindstrom was today, and I don't know if that's entirely fair. I mean, he spent a lot of his time tracking back, defending a lot in a way that I really wasn't expecting from him this season. I think there's a bit of an overreaction. I mean, some people are saying that you wouldn't exercise the option. I think he's someone that you want to think about, but if the number's 20 million, that might be a little too high. I'm not so sure you wouldn't push to maybe get another loan next year and and extend the option, because he's still a pretty good player, even if he wasn't amazing today, but he also wasn't awful. And he's been good for us, I think, for the most part, even if you're not seeing the goals and assists, you know?
Yeah, I think for me, Ryan, and I understand I called out the Discord a little bit today on this one. What disappoints me just kind of about the Jesper commentary is it's a situation where one player plays well Jack today, and all of a sudden it kind of affects the thought of someone like Jesper, right? And vice versa, right? This happens often. But that to me is kind of where the frustration comes in, is where, you know, to your point, like Jesper also wasn't very much set up for success today. He hasn't really been set up for success much of this season, right? And he's done pretty well for it. And I think, you know, we kind of forget in the bigger picture, this team's going to look a lot different next year, right? So what happens when you put Jesper in a spot, one, to succeed, but two, around better players? So I think that for me is kind of the sentiment of frustration, is where, yeah, he didn't have the best match today, and I'm incredibly happy, as the reason I chose Jack for my man of the match today, is that, you know, it's just frustrating to me that, yes, he didn't have a good performance today, but that kind of unfortunately somehow affects the body of work, right, in just kind of evaluating the player.
Yeah, I think it's all fair. I mean, I think obviously football fans, Everton fans, reactionary. They're going to jump onto narratives based on a 90-minute performance or less, in this case for Jesper. For me, it's still an open debate as to whether he's an obvious signing at that price. I think that's probably the nuanced take. Like, you get to the end of the season, you evaluate the body of work as a whole, and you make a determination. I think Ryan's point, if you can get him on loan another season, you don't right now. At 22 million, I think it's a bit of a reach to go for him. I think you'd probably look elsewhere, but there's plenty of time left, and maybe you can renegotiate the terms of the deal with Napoli. I mean, I like him as a player a lot, but I don't think he's shown enough right now to justify that kind of outlay. So, you know,
I think you can do a lot worse. I mean, you know,
yeah,
I'm just saying he's also 24 years old too. I mean, Jack's like 28. You know, I'm not trying to compare the two in terms of who you would move for, but fundamentally, you know, he's, yes, I'd rather he was 21, but you know, I think you also got to take into account. Look, the guy's averaged 3 touches in the penalty area per 90 this year. He's never had a season in his career where he was under 4 ever. At least since he's been professional. I don't have the numbers for Brøndby, but I'm pretty sure that they were higher, you know? And you could argue, well, he didn't really produce in the final third that much for Napoli. Well, I don't know if that's entirely true. He didn't get a ton of chances to do so. But I think the fact that he's already shown some versatility and the ability to track back and play in different ways, you got to think about it. Maybe 22 is a little high, James. I agree. And that's why I'm thinking, because Napoli spent so much money on the guy, maybe that's one where you can either renegotiate a little bit if he's happy to be here. And that's some of the advantages of getting a guy like this who's out of favor on loan. You know, just because the option's there. Broja would be another example of a guy, in theory, that was one of the benefits of getting that. If they really believe in his long-term viability and believe if, you know, he was mishandled by Chelsea or whatnot, it gives you the opportunity to maybe scoop up a top center forward, which are very expensive in general, position-wise, at a relatively discounted price. So we'll see how it goes. I wouldn't write off Jesper, and I sure as heck wouldn't play Harrison over him in the derby. And I think it's worth saying that, as James said earlier in the pod, that he was freed up. He had freedom to operate and do his thing today, and we were on the front foot. So it's a lot easier knowing that when you serve a ball, you're going to have a number or two in the box to do what he did today, rather than having to constantly defend and play behind the ball. So look, I like the idea if you're chasing a game, you can bring on both those guys together like we did today and change a game. And we haven't really had that dynamic in a while.
I will say, though, just, you know, and my kind of thought process is similar to James, right? I don't think he's worth, even though I kind of just went on a tirade defending Jesper, I don't think he's worth the $22.5 million at this point, right? But do I think you should negotiate down? And I have confidence in our, you know, negotiating team, especially. I know people were a little bit upset on deadline day that it kind of went to the last hour, but you look at what the team was able to negotiate, right, in regards to the loan and then the buy option being where it is. I believe, Ryan, it's $15 million for Charly. So I have confidence in the team being able to, let's just say, if it comes to a place where they want the player and want to get him at a lesser fee, I think they can do that, right? So that to me is kind of the encouraging thing about our current structure. And of course, it might change with DOF and whatnot. We'll get into that, but I have confidence that they'll make the right decision in this case.
Yeah, I agree completely, Sean. I guess my overarching take is I think Everton as a whole have, in the fan base, for loans in recent years, have gone a bit overboard of like, this guy we need to sign. And I think sometimes a loan for a season can just be a loan for a season. I don't think it always has to be this guy has an okay year and you immediately sign. Yeah, precisely. And obviously we won't get into the Andre thing, but that's like the name that immediately jumps to mind of a player who we got a little too enamored with, bought him for a big fee, and then unfortunately he had the injury, of course, but like maybe wasn't even a great fit to begin with. So I think you just have to be cautious about getting too enamored with loan players because they can just be a bit part piece for a season and you can move on and find better talent.
And I wouldn't be surprised if that fee was set for Jesper at a level that would mean that Napoli's not going to take a bath from a PSR standpoint. Keep in mind, they have to deal with that stuff too, playing in Europe, which is much more difficult. And, if they could generate some cash from that, that's fine. So I just kind of wonder if you could set it up so it's like, all right, loan fee next year, they'll take the amortization hit. We'll take the wages off, so it's kind of neutral. And then at the end of the year, you'll get a little bump for a cheaper fee and gain some net profit. Because from a PSR standpoint, it's neutral, really, in many ways, because you just wait till it runs down and then pay the difference, a little better fee, and generate a profit. So you realize that in the current period. I'm not going to work out the math for you guys on that one, but the point is that could be an option if we like him. And I do like him. I think he has a lot of potential. But the bottom line is, if you can get a whole slew of NGIs out on the play right wing for under 20 million euros, that's great. But it'll put us to the test. But I'm excited going forward. And I don't know how the derby's going to turn out. I don't think it's going to be very pretty personally. I think they're going to probably kind of wax us pretty good. But I'm looking forward to the rest of the season after that one personally.
Yeah, I think, Ryan, to your point, I actually have a bit of optimism going into the derby. I think we will learn from today, right, in regards to, self-inflicted mistakes that they obviously killed us.
Wait, are you saying the optimism train has a little bit of optimism going into Derby?
Well,
I really could not have seen that.
Unfortunately, given recent events and accusatory actions of my optimism towards the team, I just, full disclosure.
Who could you be referencing?
You know who I'm referencing. The pessimism train, I don't know what else I've been called, behind closed doors. But I am here to make sure people know that I am the optimism train. I've talked about safety the entire season. I don't change my opinion like my underwear when it comes to relegation. So I just want to make that known. That's my kind of tirade for today.
Shock.
Yeah. So, but no, in all seriousness, no, I feel pretty good about just kind of what happened today and the changes the team will make in regards to making sure that those mistakes don't happen. My only worry is 2 games in 3 days, right? With the Liverpool game and then the Palace away day.
My concern on that is the injury front. Though.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that could make a big difference. I mean, if you lose someone, knock on wood, a couple key players, I won't even say their names for lack of jinxing them, it could make things maybe a little more stressful than it needs to be. But I think we came out somewhat unscathed. I can't believe I'm saying this. I hope Mikalenko's okay. But we've got some guys that will eventually come back. You know what I mean? And that's part of the aspect. We'll eventually have a little more depth at center forward. Dwight eventually coming back would be nice. It'd be interesting to see how Moyes might use him. You could maybe flip to a back three. And the thing is, I'm encouraged the fact that I think David Moyes will make some changes too as needed to kind of ebb and flow in this stuff. I feel bad for Patterson. I wonder if he would have played today. Because you got to think about. I mean, I maybe wouldn't have played him. I don't think very highly of him. But if you put him at right back and maybe O'Brien instead of Tark to give Tark a day off, I mean, this match could look a little different.
Yeah, I think because we talked about the congestions, but once you get past that Brentford game, we have that week off, right, from basically February 26th to March 8th to Wolves, and by that time you might have Trimidi back, right? You might have it's another week of rest for the guys that are on international duty. So yeah, I think once we get past this period, and if we can add a win to it, Ryan, or two, you look at Palace, you look at United not in the greatest form. So yeah, I think anything's possible right now in regards to, I think, the team, and even like a day like today, 2-0, but they didn't play bad, right? You could have easily on another day had a result.
Agreed on all fronts with both of you guys. Don't have much to add there, so probably a good spot to wrap this episode of The Blue Frontier. We thank you all very much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice, Spotify, Apple. We appreciate that. We're continuing to get some more reviews in. Follow us on socials. Absolutely join our Discord. You can find all of those links in the description of this episode. We'll be with you following the derby, win, lose, or draw, hopefully the former. And until next time, until then, up the Toffees.